Good afternoon, everyone. Mrs. Jackie, and to the entire Jackson family, on behalf of Doug and my family, we pray with you as we did a couple weeks ago in your home, and we thank you. I thank you. So let me just say, I predicted a lot about what's happening right now. I'm not into saying I told you so, but we did see it coming. But what I did not predict is that we would not have Jesse Jackson with us right now to help us get through this. And this afternoon has been such a beautiful remembrance of his spirit, his life, and his faith. And in a way that Reverend Al talked about it and so many others have, I do think of this afternoon as what it is doing for me to renew my faith in what is possible, fueled by the hope that Jesse Jackson so often reminded us of. I'm reminded of a passage in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 7. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. And so from a young age, we know that Reverend Jackson saw that the doors had been closed to the millions of people across our nation and throughout the world who were otherwise so deserving. And they were doors, of course, to opportunity, to equity, to justice, to freedom. And so he dedicated his life, as we all know, to breaking down those barriers. So when we are speaking of these doors, I will share with you that as a child, I was raised that when you see a closed door, you must knock and wait to be invited in. What life has taught me is that if that invitation is not offered, and if that door remains shut, even after repeated attempts to knock on said door, sometimes you have no choice but just to kick that door open. Reverend Jackson was impatient. He did not waste time waiting. Even when the doors in front of him were barred and bolted, even if those on the other side hesitated or even ignored him, he always devised a way through. Jesse Jackson was a strategist. He was one of the most effective community and political organizers of our time. And he was the founder, I think most would agree, the founder of the modern progressive coalition. Think about the work that he did. In addition to the strength of his spirit and his determination, the leadership of Jesse Jackson was defined by his vision, dare I say his ambition, to tap into what otherwise had been untapped in terms of the potential of a coalition of seemingly different people who could be brought together around shared values and ideals and experience. That's what Jesse Jackson did. He modeled that for so many of us. Over the past half century, that coalition strategy, his methodology, has been the heartbeat for so many movements about progress in our country. Those movements born out of struggle, but resulting in progress. Think about, and it was mentioned, the women leaders that he elevated, like the self-described colored girls, who have been a driving force behind so many campaigns that have been about freedom and justice. Throughout his life, Reverend Jackson reminded us that the many fights for freedom are interconnected. He saw not only the interconnection, but the interdependence of the various struggles for justice and dignity on behalf of Black Americans, Native and Asian Americans, Latino, LGBTQ Americans, and Americans with disabilities. That was Jesse's rainbow, and he continued to grow it. He gave us the language, the rainbow, to understand, as has been said, the beauty that comes after the storm when we see what is possible and what can be unburdened by what has been. As he once said, when a barrier falls for one of the locked out, it opens the doors for all. And that is what he told me, and what he taught me, and how he inspired me. I was a student at Howard University, you know, when Jesse Jackson was one of the leaders of the anti-apartheid movement, and me and my classmates would go out on the mall every weekend and protest, looking at Jesse Jackson as a model of what that movement should and could have been. I was a law student then in 1988 when Jesse Jackson decided to run again. I was the first Black woman elected district attorney of San Francisco. I was the first Black woman elected district attorney in the state of California in 2004, when I created one of the first in the nation initiatives as a prosecutor that was about getting jobs and counseling to those who had been in the criminal justice system. And at the time, the powers that be told me I was not supposed to be doing that. They said, "Why are you letting people out of jail when you're supposed to put them back in?" Jesse Jackson spent a lot of time in the Bay Area, many of you may know. I saw Butch Wing here. And Butch, together with Jesse Jackson, would visit with me during those earliest days of my elected career to give me the support and the confidence and the initiative to think about how, in a position such as being DA, I could continue the idea about what it means to build coalition around a group of people whose dignity must be seen and the resources that must be put into them. Jesse Jackson, from my first elected position to when I ran with Joe Biden for Vice President of the United States, and when I became the Democratic nominee for President of the United States, always told me and convinced me that everything that we were doing is possible. And so I just want to share what I brought today. I brought with me two momentums from Jesse Jackson's campaign that I have saved since I was a student. So one is this button that reads Jesse Jackson 88. The other, some of you who were around at the time may remember, is this button. I will read it to you, and pastors, please forgive me. It reads as follows, all caps: "Damn straight, exclamation point. It's time for a Black presidential candidate." That was a Jesse Jackson pin from those days. And just a beautiful example of his determination, his sense of humor, but his ability to see what can be unburdened by what has been. And I thank you, Jesse Jackson, for your service to our nation and the world. Well done, good and faithful servant. Well done. Thank you.